Holy moly. All right, here we are at the Crystal Clear Point Studios. We're talking again, Watch Out with Dr. Matthew Pierce and Lulu Morris. I like Lulu Morris. And I'm Deborah Colleen Rose. And we spent an hour just discussing what the hell we're going to talk about today.
Right.
So tell them what we're talking about. Dr.
So
Pierce.
was that the intro, or I mean,
Yeah, that
or
was
did you
our
want me to
intro.
do? Oh, okay.
No, that's
Well,
that's the best you're going to
I
get
think
today.
what we decided to talk about is kind of relationships and maybe some of those horror stories of relationships that we've been in,
Wait a
how
minute,
they've
wait a minute, wait a
affected
minute.
us.
Did you say horror or horror stories?
I've never been paid, so we'll just say horror
Okay.
stories, horror stories. But I've been offered, I have been offered to have sex for money, but that's neither here nor there. But I can talk about that too. It wasn't really a payoff. It was more like, will you be my companion?
My Valentine? My red paid Valentine?
No, he wanted more than that. I mean, okay, so we're going to talk about relationships, and so I mean, this was one of those stories that happened like kind of way back when, um, before I was like really even dating like anyone, before I kind of came out of the closet, but I had met some people, those types of things. And I met a gentleman at a bar. And he was a big burly guy, and he was kind of fun and jovial and everything like that. And we hit it off, and we just had a lot of,
So
a
you
lot of
like
fun together.
bears. You like bears.
I mean, I like all shapes and sizes. I don't know. I mean, Latin men are kind of my thing. I love my Latin men, but hey,
Let's write that
he,
down.
Ricky
he's
Ricardo or Smokey the Bear. That's the type we're looking for, Luann.
in between, in between, in between. Yeah, um, but anyway, so I'm going to call this guy Keith. Okay, so Keith was a guy that worked for a big telecom company back when telecom was a thing. And so he was like, "Hey, can we go out again?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And he goes, "Okay, well," he goes, "Do you like steak?" And I was like, "I love steak." He goes, "Okay, well, I had this really great steak place. He says, I'd like to take you to." And he goes, would you be up for that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Great. And he's like, okay. He goes, well, I'll pick you up around 7 o'clock. And I gave my address and everything like that, on like this Friday night. And so I was like, okay. And he goes, oh, and he goes, just wear something casual. I was like, he's like, I was like, okay. So I'm waiting, and I get a knock on the door, and open the door, and there's a chauffeur
Uh,
standing at my door. And I went, can I help you? And he goes, yeah, are you Mr. Pierce? And I said, well, yes. And he goes, great. And he goes, Mr. Keith has sent his car for you. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. He says, so he wants you to join him for dinner. And I was like, okay. So I took and we went and got in the car. And so he starts driving. And the next thing I know is like we're heading over towards Love Field. And I'm like, wait a second. I was like, he said that he lived in like this part of town, like down towards the Galleria. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I was kind of getting worried and concerned. It's like, here's a younger guy, in the back of the car going, what's going on? Am I being kidnapped? What's happening? And so they take me over to like one of the back hangar areas of Love Field, and they opened a big gate, and he drove through onto the tarmac, and there's a jet sitting there, and Keith comes down the ramp, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, what's going on?" And he goes, "Well, we're going to dinner." And I was like, "I thought you were just going to drive us to dinner." And he goes, "Well, no." He goes, "The restaurant that I like is in Vegas."
You better have snacks on that plane.
And I was like, okay. And so we got on the flight, and he had my Diet Coke, or actually it was Diet Pepsi. He had my Diet Pepsi, and we sat, and the plane took off, and we landed in Las Vegas. The limo got there, we got off the plane, and we went to check into the hotel, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna go to this restaurant." And I was like, that's like a 5-star restaurant." I was like, I'm not going like this." He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." So we get to the room, and he goes over, and he opens the closet up, and he has clothes for me. I was like,
Damn, where do I sign?
I was like, okay, first of all, I was like, "How did you know my size? How, I mean," and "Well, that's really not hard, you know?" And so he's like, "Well, just try something on and see if it fits. If it doesn't, we'll go pick it up." And I'm like, you know,
You could
so
starve to
okay.
death getting ready for dinner, though. My God.
And so, I mean, we got ready for dinner. We went down, we got in the car, we drove. He had an entire like little portico room set aside for us. And he had wine selections, and, like I've never been to a steakhouse before that they actually brought the cuts of meat out before they cooked them. So you could choose which one you wanted. I mean, yeah, it was like completely and totally over the top. We went and saw a show afterwards at Caesar's Palace, and he had like his own booth, like literally his own booth at Caesar's Palace, that we sat down in for the show. And yeah, so we got back, and I'm thinking, okay, he's doing all this. We're gonna have to go back to the room. He's gonna expect something, so on and so forth. And I got back to the room, and I was like, Keith, I was like, "I'm not sure what you're expecting here. I want to be upfront. I'm not sure that, you know, what you're expecting, you know." And he goes, "Oh, no, no." He goes, "No, no, no." He goes, "No, I don't want sex. I don't want sex." He goes, I just really had a great time with you tonight, so on and so forth." And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." And so we're in this room, and I'm like, "But there's only one bed." And he goes, "Oh, no, this is your room." He goes, he goes, "I have the suite like up the hall."
Can I get his number? He doesn't want sex, so it shouldn't matter. I'm
So,
a great companion.
well, I mean, was a real sweetheart. We got back to Texas, and the driver went from the airport to his apartment, and his apartment is like one of the buildings down near the Galleria. He owns the top 2 floors.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And so, yeah, the top 2 floors of a building. So his business and what he does for a living is like in one floor, and then he lives like upstairs. Okay. So the floor below it is like most of like his staff, okay, and like the people that work for him. And then upstairs is all him. Um, he has like just a gallery of different, Monets and Picassos, and just all these artworks like all over the place. He was just very, very proud of them. I mean, it was insured for like 250 million, dollars. It was just
Dang.
like it was over the top. It was just like completely over the top. And I'm like, I was like, Keith, I don't I I don't know if what I'm supposed to think about all this. And he goes, "Honestly," he goes, "I have so much money." And he goes, "And I'm lonely." He goes, I just want companionship. And he goes, you won't have to work. You won't have to do anything that you don't want to do. I'll give you an allowance. He goes, just be here when I come home from work. You know? And I was like, um, and then it was like in my brain, it was like, but then you would be a kept man. And at that moment in my life, it was just like, I needed to do something, with my life. And so, kind of being the boy toy and being kept, I said, Keith, can't do it. Can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't. You know, I probably
But
would have been,
now, but now, but
yeah,
now.
but now, no, actually he's married. So there's yeah, we're can't do that. So
Oh, he got married in the interim.
he got married. He got married in the end. Yeah. And
Oh,
so,
so he could pay you, but he couldn't marry you.
no. So, but I think that he worked on himself, and he got himself to the point where, he was actually able to like step into a relationship. And he found a wonderful guy that, suited his needs and vice versa, you know. So I'm very happy for him. I mean, we've, we've only talked like once or twice in the past like 10 years, but he still has my number. I mean, he still, occasionally reaches out via email or text and says, "Hey, just thinking about you," you know.
Oh, that's sweet.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was no hard feelings or anything else like that, but that was kind of like one of those beginning things of my whole, like, got down to Texas and came out of the closet, type ordeal. So, but from there, God, I've had a lot of relationships were good. I've had a lot of relationships that were horrible. Um, so it's just like relationships. I mean, whether they're straight or whether they're, gay or anything in between. I mean, I've kind of been there. I mean,
Well, you know what? You bring up a point that aggravates me is that, a lot of times people in the past have made some derogatory comments because I've been married 5 times, but I've never lived with anybody. It was like if we're in a relationship that's committed, then there's marriage.
right.
And I know tons of people that have lived with 3, 4, 5, 6 different people. So why is it that there seems to be this weird idea that there's something wrong for you to be married 5 times, but it's okay to live with people numerous times?
Sequentially.
Do what?
Sequentially.
Sequentially.
Yeah, I mean, at least it shows that I was willing to make a commitment, and I was willing to say I'm putting my ass on the line, you know, and putting myself on the line spiritually, physically, financially, the whole way. So I don't, that's always annoyed me in the past when, especially when someone that I knew very well, and I knew for a fact they had lived with 10 different men in their life. And she's like, well, what's wrong with you that you've been married 5 times? I'm like, what's wrong with you that you can't commit to even trying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I look at it as marriage as an institution. Okay. Um, my spiritual beliefs differ from a lot of people. Okay. And so I don't look at marriage as necessarily as like a contractual agreement. I look at it as more of like a commitment to that person. Okay. I don't think that you have to have a piece of paper to be married. I have been married before. I have been married to a man. That lasted all about 3 years, and that ended in disaster. So, but I mean, there were circumstances around that marriage was the best thing. And I don't think I would ever do it again. I don't think that I would ever do marriage again.
I feel the same way. I was married. Well, I guess technically I still am. Uh,
Legally.
Legally, according to the state of Texas. But where was I going? When I got married, I was like all in, this is the person I chose, and But there comes a time in the relationship that I was no longer being treated as a wife. I was just kind of a placeholder. You know, I was a caretaker. There was no affection. He said, I love you all the time, but there was no proof of that.
Right.
You know, there was no showing it. And to me, it's more important that you show me than tell me. And I tried to make that quite clear, but I find it interesting that at the end of this relationship, I was told, what can I do to fix it? And I'm like, if you don't know, how am I supposed to tell you? You you dated me, right? You found me attractive. You found me to fit into your life. So how did you convince me that you loved me? What did you do? I don't remember. I said, okay.
Well, if you just met me today, what would you do to get me interested in you? That's what I would have said to him. So if you want me to be interested in you, what would you do to get me to want to date you? And that's what
Right.
you need to start doing. But I have a question for the two of y'all. So if you would never want to get married again, do you think that you would go into a relationship but hold something back because you don't want to make that type of a commitment that does include a piece of paper, that does make a legal declaration, that does mean something to people in large groups of having, a definition? How do you know that you're all in if you're not willing to get married? Is, I guess, is a simple way of putting it. And I'm not accusing, I'm not judging, I'm just confused.
Well, I think from a standpoint of gay marriage, okay, the big push was so that we would have equal rights under the law, that, people that were the heterosexual or straight couples had. And honestly, for being married to a man, I didn't see there was hardly any difference. I mean, it was we did our own thing. We had a bank account together that we would take, and that's where our bills were paid from. But we had independent money. We had independence from each other's responsibilities. He wasn't paying for my student loans. I wasn't paying for his student loans. Those types of things. So I didn't see a big advantage of the marriage in that sense. And the big thing for me isn't necessarily, like I said, contractual. It's more of a bond. It's more spiritual to me now. Like I've gotten more out of my relationships that meant something to me spiritually than I have physically, you know, and emotionally. Like, so I've had relationships that were physical, okay, but I've also had relationships that there isn't that physical, but it's like completely emotional, spiritual. And so, I can go back and forth. So as far as like holding something back, I'd probably hold back the whole signing on the dotted line, because if I need to walk away, I'm going to walk away. I'm I'm going through contractual stuff now. I don't need any more of that. So it's just like, I don't think I would do that for a marriage. Inside of a loving relationships, I don't think that I would bring that contractual stuff into it again.
Well, the last thing I thought is that after 25 years of marriage, that I would be on my own.
Mhm.
That was not, I just didn't even conceive that when I got married. So I think that it's important to me to have a partner, to have someone I live with, be a partner in many things. And I think it does work best when you have an account that's for the bills. That way you don't have to consult each other about what you want to spend money on. You know that the money in this account is for the rent, for the electricity, for the gas, for the water, you know, whatever the bills are. But I don't want to say contractual, but I want to say an understanding about why are we partners? What are we trying to accomplish in this relationship? And I do think love has I want to be loved. I want to feel loved. That is an important part of a partnership. Because I was considering that partnership. He wanted an open marriage. He wanted an open partnership.
Fuck that shit.
Well,
It's
but
too
here's
hard
the thing.
maintaining one. How do you juggle 2 and 3 at a time? One is hard enough to
Well,
to be all in my opinion. And that's the whole thing. For me to be married, there has to be the spiritual. There
mhm.
has to be the mental and the emotional. Physical is last on the list. It used to be higher on the list when I was younger, but for me, if you're going to commit, then the only 3 things that could be taken in consideration to break that commitment was the 3 A's: addiction, adultery, and abuse, or a combination of those 3. And even in my situation, I tried to work through the addictions in 2 of the relationships. I tried to work through the adultery in one relationship. I never worked through the abuse. I'm not doing that, that was it. But honestly, I know that if I had not had that commitment of this is a marriage, there have been many times that I might have just walked away without putting in the effort. And I like myself because I did put that effort in. It didn't, obviously I've been married 5 times. It didn't save the relationships 4 times, but I like myself better because I know that I did 110% to have a successful relationship. When I was dating, who gives a shit?
Well, I feel like that I put in the effort. I'm sure I don't even want to call him a husband anymore, but he still is. I'm sure he doesn't feel that I did, but I put it in and I made an effort for him to understand that he's not paying any attention to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, you never said a thing. I
That
was,
makes you want to shoot them when they say stupid things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, absolutely.
So, there was adultery in our relationship, and it did break a big trust, but I tried to work through that. And it's pretty traumatic to walk into your bedroom and have somebody else in your bed that's not you.
Mm, that is. Yes, it
So,
is.
I, you know, I was trying to work out some things personally that I was overcome with, and I felt a separation was important. And I told him that I did not want a divorce. I just needed to get my mind straight. And he cheated in that interim. He was already talking to this person within 30 days of me leaving.
Wow.
And so it was hard to deal with.
He should have been talking to you, not that other person.
I told
Yeah.
him to give me at least 2 weeks space, not to talk to me for 2 weeks. And I guess he wasn't listening to that either. So I actually
Absolutely.
called him over and said, I'm not feeling well. Could you come over? And, and he came over and I was like, I'm just really stressed and upset. And at this point, I didn't know he was seeing somebody else. And he goes, I'm not kissing you. Now, this was the person that was supposed to love me more than anything and care for me. And I
Why
should
was
have,
he not going to kiss you?
I don't know, because I was sick, because I thought I was sick. What I was doing is having withdrawal from a medication I wasn't taking. That's what was
Mm,
happening. But I was wanting him to cuddle with me or, lay down in the bed with. He didn't want any of that.
wow. That's hard. That's very hard to accept. It's very hurtful.
Hmm. And that was the first time we separated. He just was, he said, "You left me." I said, "I told you I was leaving, that I needed to get my head together. I told you I didn't want a divorce." "No, you didn't tell me that." So,
But that seems to me that there was a lot of assumption on his part. And I mean, that to me, that doesn't work, you know?
Mm-mm.
I'm sorry. If something's going on and if you are in the relationship, there should be that communication. I mean, the one thing that I mean, I've been blindsided too, inside of a relationship, like where there was not that communication of like, hey, I'm not getting my needs met here. I want the intimacy or I want the communication and I'm just not getting it. But to blindside you, I mean, that's just like, what the hell? So I don't know. I guess I
well,
expect more inside of a relationship in the
Well, you got to have
communication
both
field.
people working. You have to have
Yeah.
both, even if you're not moving at the same pace, you have to have both people moving in the same direction. And I finally really kind of understood what that meant with Richard, my third husband, when I finally got through my head. I could never be what he wanted in the relationship because I did not have a penis. No matter how much fun we had, no matter how great the conversations, no matter how much we even cared about each other, because of where he was at and what he wanted in a relationship, my lack of penis was never going to be acceptable, you
right.
know? And if he had just been more honest sooner, we both would have saved ourselves a lot of heartbreak, you know? So, does that make him a bad person? No, there are a lot of things that make him a bad person, but that's not.
But it kind of brings up a point though, because and I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a therapist, and he brought up the fact that more and more adult or like older men are now coming out of the closet as gay, and they're saying, well, I had a 65 years of a great relationship with my wife, and
Mhm.
now all of a sudden, I realized I'm gay, and I probably always have been gay. And this isn't to draw away from the man, your story and everything like that, but it's like people have to come to realize what they need, you know, and then fight for it. And I think that in my situations, I never really kind of realized what I wanted and what I needed. And either that or I was afraid to ask for it, you know? I mean, if you're a person that isn't giving me what I want, there's only so many times that I can say, hey, I really need for you to pay attention to me. I need some loving and attention and, just hold my hand or just tell me it's going to be okay. I
And
do want
that's
to
where
hear,
I was.
I love you, you know? Um, I don't know. Relationships are tough no matter what. Adding marriage into it, I guess this is my opinion that adding marriage onto the top of it, I don't know. Can you be 100% like vested in a relationship these days?
I think you can. And I don't, sorry, Deborah, I don't think you need a piece of paper to do it.
Hmm.
I think the piece of paper, though, is like having a spare tire in your car. Okay. And the fact that if you reach a point where you're not mentally well, or you're not emotionally well, or you're going through a transition period and you're off balance, it slows you down to stop you from making final decisions that affect not just you, but your partner. Because how many people do you know that say, you know what? We had a bad spot in our marriage and things went haywire. And, we actually did this and we did that, but we came back together.
Right.
And a lot of times that piece of paper is the gap stop there for that so that they can take that respite time for themselves without totally destroying the relationship, whether it be because they don't want to go through the divorce or they don't want to go through the hassle of splitting financial assets or what, or because they don't want to upset the kids, whatever, you know. So that's the other side of having that marriage certificate is it makes you stop and think before you commit to it, and it makes you stop and think before you walk away from it. That's why I
Well,
think
it
it's important.
certainly didn't stop anybody from continuing to find somebody else.
Sometimes it does. It did in your instance, but it has in other people's instance, you know, and so it. But you know what? I got a question for Matthew. Let's go hard left for a minute. I've always wondered this, especially because of my personal situation with being married to a gay man. If you are gay and you marry a woman and you live that way for many, many years, and you have a successfully competent, complete physical relationship with your wife, and even find it satisfactory, but you still have a need to be with men, does that mean that you're actually bisexual? That's the first part of the question. And if that's the case, why does it seem that men that are bisexual always seem to go extreme gay after they've been with women for a long time? Does that make sense?
I personally believe the vagina have teeth. So, you know,
Mine does.
I kind of shy away from that. Well, okay, I honestly, I mean, and I have kind of a varying opinion on this because personally, I mean, I've dated men that are bi, okay, and there's always, I don't know, there's always that question in the back of my mind is like, well, does he find me attractive or does he find her attractive? You know,
And
and
is one
so
just sexual and is the other one more emotional? That's one I
I
always
think that
ask.
there's two different ways to approach that. Okay. I think that people get into relationships for emotional reasons. Okay. I do think that people get into relationships for sexual reasons. Okay. Um, in the rare case that those are aligned, it's a great relationship, you know? So as far as like going off into left field, as far as like, I was with a woman and all of a sudden I went to, straight to a man. I've never had that experience, so I can't really speak to that. But I do get like from the gay standpoint or from the side for the guys, I've heard of people that have done that. They've been bisexual. They got into a relationship with a man. They've had relationships with women in the past. And for some reason, it just being in a relationship with a man makes sense to them.
Well,
And
that's
so they still
what
call themselves bisexual, but all of the relationships are with men.
Well, see, and that's what I was going to say. It seems to me that even for the majority of the people that I know, okay, that's what I'm basing my opinion on. Majority of people that I know that have labeled themselves as bisexual, it seems as they get older, they eventually affiliate with one sex over the other. And so
Yep.
they wind up living a heterosexual or a homosexual life, not a bisexual life.
Yep.
So, so then that just leads you to the question, well, they're just whore doggies and they just like to fuck when they were younger or what?
I have friends that are exactly that way. Okay. But I also have friends that, they started out bisexual and one was married, has 3 kids. Okay. And, he left his wife, because he couldn't deny it anymore. He met someone, his wife unfortunately, passed away.
Mm.
And his husband, the husband that he took, um, had met the wife, and actually adopted her 3 kids.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I've seen it all. I mean, I've seen all kinds of relationships, gay, straight, bisexual. I've been part of a throuple before. I mean, where there were 3 of us. I have,
But
been,
not
I
a
mean,
woman, not a
no,
woman.
not a woman,
All
but
men.
I was engaged to a woman for like, when I was in college.
You
Yeah.
didn't
I
tell
mean,
us
so
that. You never
yeah,
said that before.
yeah. I mean, I didn't come out until I actually came to Texas and had a very horrible religious experience. And that's when I finally came to my senses.
God made him gay,
Well,
literally.
listen, okay, do you want to know the story? Do you want to know the story about what
I
happened?
do. I do.
So I came down to Texas because the woman that I was engaged to, was hiding a lot of things. And I,
You were already
she wouldn't.
engaged to her when you moved here?
I was not. I was not.
Okay.
We were actually in the process of going through marriage counseling in the church. Um, and so it became to a point like we're like really getting into the, okay, Matt, you need to bring your checkbook, you need to bring your checkbook, and we have to, see how each of you handles money. So, the church was being thorough, making sure. Um, and so she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And well, guess what? She liked dad's money better than she liked me.
Oh, wow.
And so she did not want anyone to know that her father was subsidizing her a hefty amount on a monthly basis. And she was never going to reveal that to me. Um, so yeah, and pretty much, I mean, it wasn't me, but the pastor said, if everything continues on the way it's continuing on, I will not marry you
But how's that
because
a religious experience that wasn't bad?
hold on. So that's what started everything. And I was like, Pennsylvania, fuck Pennsylvania, I'm out. Okay. So I moved down here, started going to a non-denominational charismatic church here in Fort Worth. And well, I mean, it was a rather large church. And it had a really large singles group. And I thought, well, okay, well, maybe I just need to get involved in the singles group, you know. So I did, and it was a pretty large singles group. I mean, it was like between 5 to 1,500 people, like every Friday night.
Damn.
It was a big singles group. And so I got to become friends with people, and we started hanging out, and we would go shoot pool, and we do all kinds of things. And one gentleman, he and I got to be really, really close friends, and we shared a lot, and we prayed together, and we studied the Bible, all that kind of stuff. And I told him one night, and I was like, listen, I was like, I'm having a real issue here because I have these thoughts of being gay. I have these thoughts of liking men. And he's like, oh, dude, no, you have to go to the campus and you have to get some counseling on that. And well, I thought that was the thing that I needed to do. And so I was like, okay, no problem. So that was a Wednesday. I called, made an appointment. I was there. I took off work on Thursday to go to the campus to get counseling. Got counseling. They loaded me up with a book and scripture and pamphlets, this and that about how God doesn't want you to be gay, how it's an abomination, all of the quote unquote spiritual stuff. Okay, so I was, and me in education, I have to dive in and I have to see it for myself. Okay. And so I dedicated myself to do that. And so for like the next 24 hours, I was like in those booklets and reading the Bible. And well, hey, Friday night came along and hey, I was going to the group and I always sat on the front pew. I mean, that's me. I wanted to
Mm.
be right up front. I wanted that. I wanted it all. And so I took and I walked into the big area and it's one of those not it's not stadium seating, but there's three sections. So you have two side sections and then you have a big middle section.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And so I was over here on this left-hand side and it was right at the front. And I was like knee deep into not knee deep, but like just head deep into my Bible and the pamphlets and everything else like that. And I get a tap on my shoulder. And the pastor steps around. He goes, "Hey, Matthew could have a word with you outside." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." You know. And so I got up and I put my Bible down, and everything else. He goes, "Bring your stuff with you."
Wow.
And I was like,
Wow.
"What?" I was like, "Okay." So anyway, I picked my stuff up, and that's when I noticed there was no one in my section, no one in the middle section, and everybody else that had come in was standing against the far right wall. Okay. And some of them were, I mean, some of them, you have to understand the denomination or the affiliation of the church that I was with. They all thought that the demon of homosexuality was the foulest smelling demon of all. And so as I was walking out of the church, the women were over on the other side fanning themselves and gagging. And so I was escorted out of the church, and the pastor literally turned to me and said, Matthew, until you get yourself straight with God, you're not welcome back in this fellowship.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my fucking God.
You are not, if you, I mean, if you don't get yourself straight with God, then you are not welcome in this fellowship. And I was devastated. I was absolutely and completely and totally devastated. And I was like, first of all, how did he find out? I thought, counseling services were supposed to be private. Um, and so I felt betrayed. I felt like completely and totally attacked, and I literally stood in the parking lot looking back going, where did all of this come from? And he opened the door and they were celebrating inside. And as he
No.
walked through the door, they were patting him on the back and praising him. And
Oh,
at that moment, I turned around and I looked up at the heavens. I said, if that's the type of God you are, I want nothing to fucking do with you.
oh my Lord.
And that's when I started my journey and like figuring out what's there, what's out there, you know?
I'm so sorry they did that. I am so sorry they did that.
Because in my world, I would have thought that you would need to be embraced and talked to and told the love of God. And that in my world, that's how, oh, freak.
So, you want to know how I became Dr. Pierce? It's because I took it on, you know? I mean, I can look at Christianity and say there are some amazing things that you can get out of Christianity. I mean, we've had some amazing discussions, Deborah, you and I, and we don't come at it from a standpoint of like I'm a witch, and you're a Christian. It never comes across that way. It comes across as like spiritually. I mean, you say you have prophetic gifts, and I was like, that's awesome. I love how God talks to you, you know. But you have never turned to me and said, you know, you're wrong, Matthew, because you do spell work and witchcraft and you read, blah blah blah.
No, in fact, I have to tell a story on myself because, that's who I am. I was very angry with someone one time. I was like, Matthew, is there anything that you do that's not in violation of my integrity? Because I was so mad. I'm like, is there anything that you can do in your
Right.
metaphysical world and your belief system that doesn't violate me having this conversation with you? I don't think we ever came to any conclusion, really, but
Oh
I feel
no, actually
better
there was.
afterward.
There actually was, and I took action. So on your behalf, and yeah, it worked out. So, but that's neither here
It's
nor
not
there.
that I don't believe that there's other power
Yeah.
available to the world. It's just that my ultimate source is God. Okay. In fact, it's just the opposite. I believe there's all kinds of crap out there and
Yeah.
all kinds of energy and all kinds of good and all kinds of bad. Yes, if I'm sorry, if there's good, I don't know how you can not believe in bad. So I don't get that concept.
Well,
But
I mean, and that's one of the things when I've done my studying is that I can now see that there's this duality in all spiritual, faiths. Okay. And so that's what I choose to cling on to, you know?
Hmm.
But I don't see. I have a problem with people saying they're Christian and they love God and God is love, and then not
Yes.
embracing other people, regardless of their feelings
Yeah.
or their, you know,
No, I agree. And it makes me angry. And I tell everybody my favorite story in the Bible is Jesus in the temple, because I believe that there is a time and place, if you have a love of God from the Christian perspective, that we act not with self-righteous, but with righteous indignity. And if I had been Matthew's friend in that instant, if I had been at that church, there would have been hell to pay in that building. There would have been hell to pay in that building later on if I had found about it. I have frankly told people that they are awful Christians and have been kicked out of church twice because of that. I have no problem standing up with people that I feel like represent the God of love badly. I'm not
right,
judging them. I'm just saying this is not what God means by love. How do you supply that as being loving? And if you
Yeah.
cannot be supplying of love, then get out of my face. And
mhm.
that's where I stand. And I am at odds more with the Christian community than I am with the pagan community because of that. So I don't care. God made me
Well,
this way. Too bad, so sad.
but I mean,
Well,
that's kind of where I stand with things, you know. And so I guess I look at relationships, you know, from that standpoint. You know, like it's like I don't know. I guess I just have an idea of what I want out of a relationship, and that goes not only for like a romantic partner or a sexual partner or whatever, but also like a spiritual partner, you know. And so I take a look at it from all all the way around, you know. I mean, I don't want to be in a relationship that I can't truly express who I am, but I don't want to be in a relationship to hold someone back either because they have a different expression than I do.
Well,
I
you
know.
just described my marriage to Scott because we have a lot of different ideas and
Mhm.
philosophies, and we support each other to be the person that we want to be in the definition that we have for ourselves. And then we come together and share those ideas and those concepts, and while still supporting each other, even though we may not always agree. And so what that does is that it opens up areas where you might have said, I want this in a relationship that you may not get because that's not congruent to what the other person is doing in their journey as well. And so then you have to weigh the pros and the cons. Is this relationship of value because it gives me what? And so because of our differences, I feel like we find more and more commonalities because we're always looking at each other. We have to see each other. We
Yeah.
have to see each other so that we can figure out how we fit together. And to me, if more people could figure out how to, I think everybody looks for their soulmate saying, this person has to be just like me. And they're looking for mirrors. And I don't
Mhm.
see how that works. I don't want to,
Yeah.
my God, I'm hard to live with. I don't want to live with someone like me. That would drive me nuts
In one of my more really recent relationships, with, we'll call him Scott. How's that?
because that's
It,
his name, Scott. No.
Scott, because we had honest conversations. I don't think in my X number of years I've ever sat across from someone who was male that we had those honest conversations with. This is how I feel. This is what I want. This is what I don't want.
But there comes a breaking point at times, though, if you both are not on the same page with what you want, and sometimes there can't be compromises. There are some
Mhm.
things that you cannot compromise on. I found those to be few actually, but there are some things that are deep in your core being of what you need, not necessarily what you want, but what you truly need to thrive. And if that's not provided for in your environment, so I get polyamorous relationships from that standpoint because I think it's ridiculous, absolutely fucking ridiculous to expect one person to be everything you need all the time for the rest of your life. But again, that goes back to my philosophy about marriage. That marriage wedding certificate is what holds you together sometimes while you're figuring that other shit out and seeing if you can't come together at a later time and rejoin on your travels together. And that's happened with Scott and I, and it's helped us to be together for 27 years. And we're at a place now to where neither one of us can imagine doing this journey without the other one. It just, it's, I
And that's what
didn't,
you hope for in a marriage.
yeah, and I didn't understand how you could feel so deeply about another person and still retain your individuality. And so here I am at this ripe old age going, God, I wish I'd known this all my life because it would have been so different. How you can be two and still be one,
Mhm.
and how beautiful that is.
Well,
Well,
and a lot of women do say they lose themselves in a marriage, or one person. I don't mean to exclude you, Matthew. One person in a marriage sometimes thinks that, you know, I'm all about this person and I've lost my identity.
mhm.
My experience was the opposite, though. I never lost my identity. I guess I'm just too strong a personality. But what I did not do well, of course, I didn't have like good partners either. I mean, every one of my marriages ended because of one of the three A's or more: abuse, adultery, addictions. But I didn't know how to be supportive a lot of times. And while I was holding on to my identity. So my lack of being supportive without infringing upon their rights or their authority or their own ability to learn, I was too dominant at times, not to bossing them around, but it was like I cast a shadow and they couldn't see clearly. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right? But
Yeah.
so I've learned to be able to pull my energy in, and I don't always have to express my opinion. I like to, but I don't need to. You know.
But to your credit though, because I mean, you've shared examples where, I mean, you've gone to Scott and said, "Hey, I'd like to experience X, Y, Z." Okay. And there's been occasions he's like, "You can do that if you want to." And there are occasions that he'll do it with you, you know? And so that to me, I mean, it goes into the whole like finding your other half or finding your better half or whatever you call that. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to finding your complement. Like
Compliment. I agree. I agree.
I really like that you and Scott complement each other. Like it
Well,
works.
he gives me so much freedom in our relationship. I was always surrounded by people that wanted to control me. So that made me very rebellious in the relationships because I was not going to be controlled. Scott is he gets a little, he used to get a little jealous when we were younger, but he's not the jealous type as a rule. And the reason for that is because he trusts me. And he
Mhm.
says, but you earned that trust because you've never given me a reason not to trust you. It wasn't like I had to prove anything to him. He goes, you've always been a person of your word. You always did what you said. You were always where you said you were going. So I always did what I could to make sure that we had this line of communication because we spent a large part of our marriage there for a couple of years living apart because of his job. He was only coming home 1 or 2 weekends a month there for a couple of years. So if we had not been, individuals and autonomous of ourselves, our marriage would not have survived that way. But I can go to him and say, I need this. He goes, do it. In fact, it's actually the opposite. He goes, you need this. Go do this. You need this. Go do this. You make good decisions. So give yourself freedom to do that. He's always saying, I don't spend enough money on myself. I don't splurge enough. I don't compliment myself. and things like that. So he is my biggest supporter and my biggest cheerleader. And I tried to do the same for him, but I had a more difficult time learning how to communicate with Scott. Scott just needed to learn to open up more, to communicate more, because he lives in his head so much. I had to learn a whole new language. I don't speak English with Scott. I speak Scottish, you know, because what I thought was blunt, open, honest communication came out as cruel and judgmental for him. And I had to learn, and I'm still learning. And sometimes I'm like, I said this, that didn't get on the bad side of you, did it? It didn't hurt your feelings, did it? Because that was not my intent. And but now he also trusts my intent and knows that I'm not judging him. So he can hear the things that I say without them sounding as harsh to his ears as they used to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's about getting to know each other to that point where the communication styles start fitting. It's like you've translated, you know. You now speak Scott, he now speaks Deborah.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to compromise and I think I don't know how you can be in a successful relationship if you don't know yourself well enough to be able to say, I have to have this, I can compromise on this, and I don't give a shit about this. Do what you want to. So, um, and also make sure that you tell people when those priorities shift. Like in my 20s, if adultery was involved, that would have been a no-brainer in a marriage. That now I'm like, I don't know. I would be hurt if Scott committed adultery. I hope he's not listening. But if he committed adultery, I think we would work through it, you know? Because I realize that that's a cry for help, or it's a cry for need, or there's a wound there that needs filling or healing, or so, and I'd have to look at my part of what created that. You know what I'm saying? Now, I wouldn't like it, and I would like to think I would handle that with grace and dignity. I'm not sure, but I would do my best to do that. But in my 20s, no. In fact, I shot at somebody because they committed adultery. I'll kill you. No. Are we
Well,
allowed to say?
I don't know. It depends.
We'll bleep that out in post.
Um, I had a lot of freedom in my marriage, and I always appreciated that. But the more he tried to, the more he went into himself because he was not feeling well, the more he did that, the more I thought, why am I sitting here watching TV and doing nothing? I mean, I would ask him to please come and watch a movie with me, and he would disappear in the middle of the movie and go back to bed. And he was laying on the couch. It was not like I was torturing him in a hardback chair. So I just started spending more time with my friends, and he actually threw that up to me instead of addressing it as communication. He just let it go on and on and on without saying, I don't like it. So I think that communication is key.
Well,
Yes,
sometimes you can communicate till you're blue in the face, but if they're not able or capable or willing, it doesn't matter what you communicate. So maybe he wasn't capable if he had depression. Maybe he was not able because he didn't feel good and just didn't have the energy, or maybe he just wasn't willing to make the effort. So, I don't know. I wasn't there. You were.
And I don't know whether he was just not willing to make the effort, or he didn't think it was worth it to start an argument or to start. The thing about it is I just wanted him to spend time with me doing something. And if that meant he couldn't leave the house, then we could do things like watching a movie or coming up with a series of things to watch together. But that didn't happen either.
Did he go to bed and go to sleep, or did he go watch something else in the other room?
He went to bed, went to sleep.
See, that makes me wonder if he had depression or something, or
I'm
was
sure he
feeling
did.
bad.
I'm
Yeah.
sure he did.
But it's still, the other thing is that if, okay, so this is a real good question. So if they have depression, or like in older couples, when another couple, when a person in the couple becomes, has dementia or Alzheimer's, does that give them freedom in a monogamous relationship to now branch out, or to be able to divorce them to go live their own life because that other person has totally disengaged either emotionally or mentally? Because that comes up a lot now, where the families are angry at one spouse because they leave the other one when they've got dementia and stuff like that. And if you're living your life on your own because the other spouse is depressed and won't function, I mean, they might as well be dead. If they're that non-functioning to where they're not working, they're not going out. So where do you draw the line? Do you leave? Do you just, are you now roommates? Well, so I mean, that opens the door for a lot of questions.
Big time questions. And I've actually been kind of on both sides of the coin, you know. I have been with someone who went through a lot of issues with depression, anxiety, or whatever else like that, and completely and totally withdrew. And it's like I was committed to them, and I just couldn't do it. I just could not do it. And then the whole, the feelings about guilt and about, well, I got to stay with him because, I was committed to helping him and so on and so forth. And this is just not who I met. This is not the person that, that I've had this relationship with. Um, Eventually he left, but, I tried to stick it out, you know. But I've also had, people that, well, one of the people that I had a relationship, we were caring for his mother, you know, and she had dementia, she had, Alzheimer's, and we were taking care of her. And when she finally passed away, that's when he lost it.
Mm. Mm.
And, so it's just like, he's like, this is where I'm headed. This is where I'm going. And, so I can't put you through that. I can't, you know? And so he said right up front, he goes, if I ever get that way and we're still in a relationship, he goes, no, you have every right that if you're not getting what you need from me, go get it somewhere else. Okay. And that he was serious. He was serious about it. Well, unfortunately, he went crazy, and that ended that relationship, and I actually had to be physically removed by the police. Not because I was doing anything, but he was threatening me with a gun. Um, and yeah, so I had to get a restraining order and had to, change my address, and yeah.
So Matthew
It,
just answered my question. No, we can't say that on about shooting someone.
yeah, well,
I'm trying to
so.
lighten our mood a little bit before we
Well,
close.
Okay, here, let's do this. Let's do this. Because I think we've had an amazing conversation today. I think that we've had, a really great heartfelt thing. So to lighten this up a bit, okay, I am dead against you all trying to set me up with someone.
I would never do that. Never,
But
ever.
but from what you know of me right now, what kind of man would you set me up with? I want you to both answer that question for me. Because
Well,
I'm
personally,
interested to
right
know.
now, I don't know any gay men that I would set you up with, because I don't know of any that I feel are, I don't want to say deserving, but that would meet the basic criteria of what you would be wanting in a relationship. They would need to be intelligent. They would need to be thoughtful. They would need to be nurturing and loving, but at the same time, they would need to have a core strength to where they would know how to batten down the hatches if they needed to. They'd have to be open-minded. They would have to know that while they are the center of their own universe, the universe is bigger than them. And they would have to be financially stable. And it wouldn't hurt if they look like Tom Cruise. So there you go.
Luann, what do you think?
A taller Tom Cruise.
A taller
Yes,
Tom Cruise.
I keep forgetting he's short.
So I agree with all of that. You need someone that's caring and loving, but knows how what your strengths are and when you need to be independent. We can't be smothered, but then when we need reassurance and oh, what word was I looking for there? When we
Comfort.
just need someone to be loving toward us and caring. You know, I mean, there were just times when I needed a good hug and you know, so it's not about
Did she freeze?
yes.
Oh, oh, I
No,
thought
she's
the screen had frozen.
Well, when I start thinking, sometimes I can't think and really let the words come out of my mouth because the wrong ones come out.
Well, I think you
I
did a
think
wonderful job.
So I have to
that's
think it
awesome.
through. But that you know, I would agree with everything she said. Plus being your own person.
I love that. So thank you for that. So now this is what I'm going to do. Pink hat. I'm going to tell you about the pink hat because honestly, that was one of the happiest times of my life. I
Wait a
was
minute,
with
wait a minute, wait a minute,
someone.
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. If you don't know what we mean by pink hat, if you look at the introduction, there's a picture of him with a feather boa and pink hat of some sort. He looks like a pink frickin' chicken. Okay.
Yeah. So I was with someone. I've been with this person for over a year. Um,
Oh, oh.
Oh, sweetie.
and that pink hat, we were at the Renaissance Festival. And we had been drinking a little bit of too much of the pear ale. And he was the kind of person that was so spontaneous.
Mhm.
And I mean, love that I love being spontaneous. And I mean, he had a sense of humor like you would not believe. And it that day was just one experience after the other. And so it was the end of the day, and there was this hat shop at Scarborough Fair. Um, and all he wanted to do was take pictures with me with all the crazy hats and just do those types of things. And he was one of those people that even if I didn't want to do it necessarily, he'd force me to do it to get myself out of my comfort zone and out of my box. And so, yeah, that pink hat was part of that experience inside of that relationship. About 6 months afterwards, I lost it. And that that pink hat to me symbolizes what I strive for inside of a relationship. It's the openness, it is the fun, it's the living. It's not taking life too seriously, but it's being intelligent enough to know that you have someone special. It's communicating. Sometimes it's about coercion and forcing people outside of their box. But that pink hat to me was probably one of the happiest times in my life.
Mm.
And so it's apropos to kind of like end the segment with the explanation of what that pink cat is.
I
And so
love
every
that.
time I see that, I am always reminded of this dear sweet man that I no longer have.
I love that you shared that with us.
Yep.
I feel special that you shared that with us. And on that note, I'm also going to change my description of who I want to find for you. I want a male version of me
Ah,
because I'm always forcing you out of your comfort zone.
I swear to God, I'm still having that t-shirt made that says "fuck you," Deborah.
Well, if you will get some made up, we'll put them up on the deborahrose.com
Here
website
we
to
go.
sell.
well, you need to
Which,
have a little asterisk on the you in fuck and you because we can't wear them in public.
who can? I can. What's wrong with you? You weenie?
The actually spelling the word out, I mean, it's considered obscene.
Yeah,
And so you need to like change the text up a little bit. So
because
Well,
that's a
being obscene is you can be arrested for.
yeah.
okay, so can we brand that? We can brand that.
Yeah, hell yeah. Anything can be branded.
Yeah, I love that. So, I think most of the people that have been clients of mine in the past will go, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's right.
If they have the story.
So,
So,
but I mean, thank you for saying that because, yeah, I mean, he was the type of person that, you know, and he was there through that whole transition of Christianity to
Oh,
learning to be with, people, other than, Christians. He was there when I started, taking and learning website design and graphic design. He was there, just he was there. And it was the time before, marriage was even thought of. And so that's kind of where I was at. If I could have married him, I probably would have. But oh yeah,
that
that's the
warms
pink
my
cat story.
cockles. Do I have cockles? It warms my cockles. Does it warm your cockles?
what's a cockle?
I don't know, but it sounds vulgar, doesn't it?
It's a valve. A cockle is a valve.
Okay. But I'm glad that you shared that with us. And so I want to tell you what I believe, hoping that this might make you feel better about Christians in general. They say in Christianity that when we get to heaven, that, we get all these wonderful rewards in heaven. And so I think most Christians think that they're standing there before God at the throne and goes, oh, well, you did this. And so you get a jewel and you did this and you get a jewel and you did this and you get a jewel. Here's what I think happens. We get a big basket of jewels. He's going to go, well, you did this, so you have to give me that back. And then you did this, and you have to give me this back. And oh, and you don't get to keep the green one either. No, no, no. So I do think that there will be an accounting for every time that we did something that was unkind and unloving that made people think that God was bad. So, call it karma, call it judgment day, call it whatever you want, but there will be an accounting and they will be held to task for how bad they treated you. And I'm sorry they treated you that way.
Well, you know what? You've made a tremendous difference. Both of you have made a tremendous difference in my life. I mean, and just being open and being welcoming and these conversations that we have on this podcast, means so much to me. And people are watching and people are telling me specifically, that it's like we love the interaction. We love how you all react to each other and how you're gracious with each other, and
Well, I wish
well,
they would come up with things that we need to talk about.
Oh, or either come on and let us talk about their problem so they can have that fuck you, Deborah moment for themselves.
well, I mean, I told you I mean, like, I think it was the last podcast, You know, people want us to actually do something out and about.
Well, I got to find a location and I haven't had time to really look. And then I have to figure out how we would make that work because we would need more than just one computer. And would it be reverberating if we did that? So there's some technical things to figure out as well. So if anybody wants to come and volunteer and help us with that or volunteer a
Yeah.
location, feel free. Let us know. All
Yeah.
right, Dr. Pierce, tell them how to get a hold of you, darling. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. You can get a hold of me at matthew@matthewapierce.com or www.matthewapierce.com.
And you're hearing it here first. Lulu's got a new name and new website coming, but tell them how to get a hold of you still in the meantime.
In the meantime, Ancient Herbal Apothecary can be reached at herbalblue1105@gmail.com.
I just thought of something.
What?
The initials for your company is AHA. You're having an
Yes.
aha moment.
Yes. Yes.
Luann, what did I say? What did I say?
Matthew said the exact same thing.
Really? Great
Yeah.
minds think alike, darling.
Yes,
Great minds
they
think
do.
alike. I love you too, Lulu. So I'm Deborah Colleen Rose. Miles of Smiles Events is our sponsor because we're entertaining sometimes. Deborah Colleen Rose is where you can call me if you want a fuck you, Deborah moment of your and Investigative Solutions Group, isgu.com if you need somebody to investigate because they're abusing you, adulterating you, or they have an addiction. Adulterating you, is that a word? I don't know, but I like it. All right. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, y'all. Bye-bye.